Hi, my name's Stuart Lynch, and this is the sixth video in the SwiftData series where we're building an app to track books that you've read, want to read, or have read. In this video, we'll be looking at many-to-many relationships, and we want to create a list of genres that we can associate with one or more of our books. We'll be looking at what a many-to-many relationship is, and what you need to look for when you are creating and deleting genres either from a book or from the genres array itself. I love getting your feedback, so tap the thumbs up button if you enjoyed this video and leave a comment below. Make sure you subscribe to the video and ring that bell to get notifications of new videos. And if you want to support my work, you can buy me a coffee. If you are following along with me, you can continue on with your project from video 5. If not, then please download the completed project from the correct branch for this project repository. It's the 5th video one-to-many relationships branch. I'll leave a link in the description. For this video, I've started a new branch for many-to-many relationships. What I'd like to do is to be able to associate one or more genres with a specific book. But unlike the quotes where there is a one-to-many relationship between a book and an array of quotes, where each book can have many quotes, each quote, though, is associated with only one book. In this case, a book can have many genres, but each genre can be associated with many different books. And a genre can be something like fiction, nonfiction, romance, mystery, etc. We want each of the genres to be associated with a specific color, so the user can choose that as well. So we're going to need a model for this new object, and we'll have to define our properties. So create a new file called genre, and import SwiftData. Create a new class called genre, and create two properties, both strings, one for the name and one for the color. We're going to be storing a hex value for a color as a string. Then make sure you apply the model macro to this class and create an initializer. In its simplest form, a hex color is a 6-digit combination of hexadecimal digits defined by its mix of red, green, blue, RGB. So basically a hex color code is shorthand for its RGB values with a little conversion gymnastics in between. Hex representations of colors use 16 bits to represent the red, green, and blue values of a color. Now there's no default way for us to provide a string for that hex value. And I want to generate a SwiftUI color view. Because there are some really smart people out there, there are some extensions that we can use. The one that I use is by Max Alexander at this link here, and I'll provide a link in the description. So let's copy the code from this first code box here. Then return to your SwiftUI project and create a new file and call it UIColor plus extension. Change the import here to UIKit and paste that code into here. This will allow us to go between UI colors to the hex strings, but we want a Swift color view, so we'll need that second extension. So return to Max's blog and copy the content from the second code box. Back in Xcode, create another file and call it color plus extension. And paste the copied code replacing the import, and that will also change the import from Foundation to SwiftUI. I can return to our genre model now and then change that import to SwiftUI. And I can create a computed property for hex color, which is of type color. Use the new color initializer for color, using the hex for self.color, and it's optional, so if for some reason it fails, we'll supply a color of red. Well, now that we have our model, we can establish a relationship between our book model and the genre. And as I mentioned, each book can have any number of genres or none at all, which will be the case when we create our book. And since I'm looking into the future where we're going to want to involve CloudKit, it just makes sense here to make the properties optional. So in our book class, I'm going to create a new property and I'll call it genres, and it's going to be an optional array of genre. If I switch to the genres class, I'll do the reverse, and I'll create a variable for books that will be an optional array of book. I'm not going to want to delete all the genres in a books genre array as we did with comments when we delete one of our books. We just want to use the default nullify, but I do want to be more explicit here and specify that the genres and specify the inverse for the relationship for our genre is the genre.books. I don't need to do anything else on the other side of this relationship. Now where the app starts, again, I don't need to do anything special here for our app entry point to let our container know that we have another schema, because book contains a property for this new genre, so like quotes, SwiftData can handle that for us. During the design process here and testing, I'd like to have some examples to work with. So in our preview contents folder, I'm going to create another new file, and I'm going to call it genre samples. And here I'll just create an extension to genre, and I'll create a static property called sample genres that will be an array of genre, and we can start with that empty array. So let me create 4 genres. The first one I'm going to call fiction, and I'll specify a color of green, which is the hexadecimal 00FF00. I'll duplicate this 3 more times and change it to provide a color of blue, which is 0000FF, one for romance, for the red color, which is FF0000, and then one for thriller, which is black, which is just 6 zeros. Well, the next thing that I want to do if we're going to use these in our preview is to add them to our preview container. So let me go here first in our book list view and create a property for sample books. Then one for sample genres, each using these static properties from the extension. So then I'm going to change this first function then to call preview add example books. And then for the second one, I'm going to add the examples that are our genres. Well, we're getting a lot of files in our navigator now, so I'd like to organize them before I move on. So the first thing I'm going to do is select book list view, book list, new book view, and edit book view. And I'm going to select them all and create a new group from that selection. And I'm just going to call it books. You can organize things any way that you like. This is just how I'm doing it. Then I'm going to select my 3 models, the book, the quote, and genre. And I'm going to create a new group from them, calling it models. I've got 2 extensions, so I'll select them. And I'll create a group called extensions. I've only got 1 quote view, but I might as well just select it and create a group on its own that I'll call quotes. Let me move it up below the books. Then I'm going to select the ratings view, and with it, I'll just create a new group that I'll call accessory view. Now in the navigator, you can select any folder or be at the top level at any time and use the Option key and either your left or right arrows to collapse or expand all enclosing group folders. Let's create a view that will allow us to view all of the available genres in the list and at the same time allow us to select ones that might apply to a selected book. So let me create first a group that I'm going to call genre that will contain all of the files related to this. Inside there then, let's create a new SwiftUI file that I'll call GenreView. And I'll import SwiftData. The view will be presented as a modal sheet, so we'll need to access the environment's dismiss key path and create a variable for that. I'm also going to need access to the context, as I'll be presenting a list with a swipe action. So another environment variable for the key path model context that I'll just assign to a variable called context. The query will be getting a book object from the edit book view, where I'll have a button to display a sheet. This time though, I want to receive the book as a bindable object. And this means that we'll be able to make changes directly to any property of the book, and they'll get updated and saved by SwiftData. To present a list of all genres stored in our genre table, I can use the query macro, and I'll provide a sort order that will sort by name key path. And that'll give us a genres array. And let's just fix this preview now so that we can work with it. We can do the same as we did in our book list view. I can create an instance of the preview struct, passing in book.self so that it gets all our models. Remember, book has relationships to the genre as well. I'll create properties for book and genre samples. And then I'm going to add those examples into our preview provider. Next though, I can select one of those books, like the one at index 1, and one of the genres, say the one at index 0, and append it. Then I can return that genres view passing in that same book. And then use the preview container for our model container. To design this view first, comment out the 3 lines in the preview that contain references for the genre. This will mean that our view doesn't have any genres yet. And I'm going to do this because I want to replace the body with the view. And if the genres array doesn't exist, I want to present a content unavailable view. So we'll check first to see if genres is empty. And then I'll create a content unavailable view that will allow us to provide some kind of content, a description, and a button action. So for the content, we'll create an image using the system image bookmark.fill. And I'll set the font to a large title. For the description, I'll create a new text view, and I'll just use the string, "You need to create some genres first." Then for the action, I'm going to create a button with the label create genre. I'll leave the action for the button empty for now, but I will set the button style to a bordered prominent style. So that was the case if there are no genres. So else, assuming we now have genres, it's not empty, we can display a list using a for each loop to loop through each genre. That'll provide us with a genre that we can display the genre's name with. Let's enclose that entire if-else clause inside a group. And then I'll enclose the group inside a navigation stack. And that's going to allow me then to apply a navigation title of book title to the group. Well, now we're seeing that content unavailable view prompting you to create a genre. However, if we uncomment our lines for genre, the list appears. Well, now we can fix up our view within the list. So we'll embed the text view in an H stack. And then for the first element in the H-stack, we're going to create a button that we can toggle to add or remove that genre for that book. So first, let me unwrap book genres and check if it's empty or not. If it's empty, we can create a button and leave the action empty for now. The image will be a system name, circle. And I don't know why my preview keeps crashing on me, but when I edit the code, it comes back. Let's add a foreground style of genres hex color. In the else clause then, we'll create a button, same empty action, but the label is going to be conditional on whether or not the book genre contains the genre. If it does, then we'll use circle.fill, else we'll just use a circle. And again, I'll apply a foreground style of genre.hexcolor. We see that our first genre of fiction must be an array because we added that in our preview. So outside of our struct, let's code our function to add or remove genres, receiving a genre that was passed in. So we'll call it add remove genres with that one parameter. Well, we can unwrap our book genres array with an if let. Then if book genres is empty, we can append our genre to the book genres array. Else, if it's not empty, we need to know if the existing book genres array contains that genre. And at the same time, determine the index by finding the first index from the book genres where its ID is equal to the genre ID. If we can find it, we can remove it at that index. If we can't, we'll need to append it to the genres array. So with that function in place now, we can call it in our action buttons, passing in that genre. Now we can tap on a genre to add it to the list or remove it from the book genre array. The preview container is updating our book in memory. Now that we can present genres, we'll need to be able to create new ones. So let's start by creating a new SwiftUI view inside the genres group, and I'll call it NewGenreView. And I'll import SwiftData. I'm going to need two state properties that we can use to create our new genre. One for the name and one for the color. The name will be a string that we can initialize as an empty string, but color is going to be a color view that we can use in a color picker to change, so set the default to red. We'll be creating a new genre object, so we'll need access to the context from the environment. So we'll access that model context and call it context. And this will be presented as a modal sheet, so again, let's provide the ability to dismiss using the dismiss key path from the environment to create a dismiss property. I'm going to replace the body with a navigation stack containing a form. As the first item in the form, I'll create a text view with the title key, name, and bind it to the name state property. And then I'm going to follow that with a color picker, where the title key is set the genre color, and the selection will be bound to that color state property. I'm also going to ignore opacity, so the supports opacity argument here is going to be set to false. And then I'm going to create a button with a label create. For the action, we'll create a new genre where the name is our name. For the color, we'll need to convert the color to a hex string using our extension. Now this has to be force unwrapped because it's optional, But since it'll be coming from the color picker itself, it's safe to force unwrap it here. And now that both are strings, we can use the context to insert the model. And then we can dismiss it. Well, let me set the button style to bordered prominent. And I'm going to apply a frame and set the max width to infinity with an alignment of trailing, and that's going to push it to the right-hand side of our form. And to make sure that we don't get any empty colors, we'll disable it if the name is empty. And then to the form, I'll add some padding. I'll create a navigation title using the string NewGenre, but I'll set the navigation bar title display mode to inline. Now, if you tried to create one here, the app would crash because we have not set up our preview container. However, there's not much point in doing that here. Let's return to our GenreView and add a button to present this. So as the last row in the list, after the for each loop, create a labeled container view using content and label. For the content, I'm going to create a button, but I'll leave the action empty for now. For the button label, I'll create an image using the system name plus.circle.fill. And I'll set the image scale to large. And I'll also set a button style of bordered prominent. For the label of the labeled content itself, I'm going to create a new text view using the string createNewGenre. And I'll apply a caption font and set the foreground style to secondary. Let me also set the list style here to plain. Well, the button that we created will be used to present a modal sheet. So I'm going to create a new state property called NewGenre and initialize it as false. And then for the action of that button we created, we'll just toggle this state property. Now, sometimes I find that just commenting a line and uncommenting a line of code fixes these false preview crashes. It's also important now that we go back to that content unavailable view where we had that action button. We can do that same NewGenre toggle here as well. And then once it's toggled, we'll need to present a sheet. So we'll create a sheet modifier where is presented is bound to that toggle. And we'll use that to present the NewGenreView. And I'm going to create a toolbar so I can get a button that's going to allow me to dismiss the screen. And then inside there, I'm going to create a toolbar item where the placement is top bar leading to have it on the leading edge. And I'll create a button that I'll call back. It simply calls the dismiss function. Now this itself, this view needs to be presented from the edit book view, just like where we created the button to present our quotes view. So I'm going to go back to the edit book view and create a state property for show genres and set it to false. So where we have that navigation link to present our quotes, I'm going to embed that in an H stack to present both of these buttons side by side. And then as the first item in the H stack, I'll create a button where the title key is genres. But now in Xcode 15, we can also add a system image to our button label. So I'll specify bookmark.fill. And for the action, I'll simply toggle show genres. Well, now that we have that show genres action toggle, I can create a sheet that's going to present our genres view. So that sheet is going to be bound to is presented to show genres. And then I can create the genres view, passing in that book. Well, if you return now to book list view, we can test out in the preview. Tap on any row, and you'll get to the detail view. And from here, we can tap on the genres button. and I can set 1 or 2 genres for my book. If I tap on back, I don't see the genres added yet because we haven't coded that. That's next. But if I return to the genres view, I'll see that they must have been inserted because they're still selected. So let me try adding a new genre. I'm going to call it action. And I'm going to pick a color and add it. And we can see that it's been added alphabetically to the list. If I select it and go back, it'll get inserted. If I return, I would see that new genre has persisted and it's been selected. So we have 2 more things to do. I want to create a nice way to display the selected genres on this detail view as well as the list view. And we'll still need to be able to delete a genre that we no longer want altogether and make sure that it gets removed also from each of the books. Since I want the same look to be on both the list view and on the detail, I'm going to create a SwiftUI view to present our stack of genres. So I'll create a new SwiftUI file that I'll call GenreStackView. Now this view will receive an array of genres when it's presented, so we'll call that genres. And then I'll replace the body with an HStack, and then we'll just use a for each loop on our genres array that'll give us a genre. And I'm also going to sort the array using the key path comparator, which will be our genre name. So then we can just create a text view using that genre name. I'll set the font to a caption, foreground style to white. I'll apply some padding of 5, and then I'll set the background to a rounded rectangle with a corner radius of 5 and a fill that uses that genre's hex color. Now, I'm not going to use a preview here, as this is a pretty simple view. So we can add this then to our 2 views. So in Book List View, where we do our query in the navigation link label, and in the VStack after the rating, I'll use an if-let to determine if we have an array of genres, and then just display that GenreStackView, passing in that array. So I can copy this then and use that same code in our Edit Book view after the text editor for the synopsis, but before the 2 buttons. So let me return to Book List View and test it out. Well, this is almost perfect, except what if we had lots of genres? We may run out of space in this horizontal stack. So to prove this, let me launch this in my simulator. And you'll see I've added quite a few more genres for this set of books. And for one in particular, I have assigned a lot of genres. Now it looks okay here, but let me go and add one more genre to this book. Back in Edit View now, it doesn't look so good as it's trying to cram all of those genres in this row. And if I get back to the list view, it's even worse. If it were in a scroll view, there wouldn't be a problem. Well, it turns out that it's a pretty easy fix. We can simply use a view that fits to you only use a scroll view if necessary. And I use this as an example in my video on view that fits. So in the books list file, I'm going to embed the genre stacks view in a view that fits. And then I'm going to, as the second view, add a scroll view that is horizontal and set the shows indicators to false, and then present that genre stack view, passing in the genre. So I'm going to use this exact same code in the edit book view. Let me run this out in the simulator now. And I can see it looks perfect, not only in the list, but also in the detail view. It only scrolls if necessary. Now, the last thing I want to cover is deleting a genre from the genres array. Deleting a genre won't force any deletion of a related book because the default is just to nullify. So that's going to be okay. We're going to need to do this in the simulator, so if you're following along, make sure that you have added a number of books, a number of genres, and have genres related to a number of different books. What I want to do first, though, is to open that SQL database to see what the structure currently looks like. If I view the data for this book, I see no representation of the array of genre. But notice that this first column, though, Z_PK, that stands for the primary key. For example, the book QB7 has a primary key of 1. Similarly, if I view the data for genre, there is no mention of books here, but there is another primary key field here too. But when we create a many-to-many relationship in SwiftData, behind the scenes, a new join table is created. And in this case, it's called Z_1 genres. If I open it up, we'll see that it has 2 columns, one for books and one for genres. And the list here is the primary keys for each record. So you can see here that the book with the primary key 1, that's RQB7, has genres 1 and 6. And if I switch to genres, I see that 1 is fiction and 6 is historical. So if I return to the app once more, I'll be able to see that, in fact, that is the case. So what I want to do now then is cover the deletion of that entire genre to see what happens. So in GenreStackView, I created the list of genres using a for each loop. So we can use an onDelete modifier here for swipe action. I should just be able then to loop through the index set to create an index and then use the delete method to delete from the genres array at that index. So let's run this now in our simulator. And I can see that the detective genre is associated with 2 books. So let me delete it. I'm going to select one of the books with a detective genre. And then I'll bring up the genre screen where I now have that swipe action right to left to delete it. When I return to the book detail view, though, it's still there. This is a problem. However, if I return to the list view, though, that genre is no longer being displayed for any book. The problem is that when we present our genres view and delete the genre, there is no binding back to that specific array for our book. The solution, however, is pretty easy. We just have to remove the book first from the array. That will update the view that's presenting this, and then I can delete the genre, which will then automatically update the list view. So here we can unwrap book.genres using an if-let and see at the same time if that book genres contains genres at that genres index. If that's the case, then we can let the book genres index be the first index, where the genre ID for this book's genre is equal to the one at the index of the entire array. And then we can remove that at the book genre index. So let's test one more time. I see fiction is associated with many books, so let me select any book that has fiction. I can see it here in the detail view, so let me go to the genre screen and swipe to delete that fiction genre. When I return to the detail screen, I see it's no longer displayed here. And then returning to list view, we see it's gone from every book. Well, that pretty much completes the basics of this app for SwiftData, but there's still a couple more things that I'd like to do with this app. So if you're interested, you can stick with me for the next couple of videos. One of them is SwiftData related and the other one isn't. In the next video of this series, I wanted to talk about localization and how we can make our app available in other languages. That's not SwiftData related at all, but I want to cover it before I get into CloudKit, which is. If I did this after CloudKit, people starting with that repository as a starter project may have some issues related to CloudKit, so I'm going to leave it to the end. So I hope you stick with me until we finish this series.